Welcome back. So a lot has been said about the low voter turnout at this year's elections. The IEC calculates it has a percentage of registered voters who cast their ballots, about 12 million, they told us. But mathematician Bruce Bartlett says there's more than one way to do the calculation. He's been crunching the numbers for years now and says low voter turnout is not a new issue. Bruce, thank you for agreeing to talk to me at such short notice. This is after, of course, I read your piece in The Conversation, and this is a piece from 2019 that you wrote, because let's start here before we get into the numbers of 2021. You say that it's not really clear what the baseline is that we use to measure voter turnout. Explain that point to me a little bit more.
Yes, exactly. So I think we must ask ourselves, what do we actually want to know when we say what the voter turnout is? So, for example, if we think about unemployment statistics, we know there's two ways of measuring it. You can measure the number of people who don't have a job divided by the number of people who are actively looking for a job. Or you could take an expanded definition where you take the number of people who don't have a job divided by the total number of people. Sorry, I got that a little bit mixed up there. But anyhow, we can do the same thing with the voter statistics. So I would argue, and I think most people would agree, that what we should really be looking at for the health of our democracy is the number of people who voted divided by the number of people who were eligible to vote. In other words, the percentage of the electorate who actually voted on the day. And if you look at that in 2019, remember that in South Africa, every South African citizen over the age of 18 is eligible to vote. So if you look at that statistic in 2019, although we had 66% of registered voters who actually voted, only 49% of the electorate actually voted, which is quite a seriously low number. And, it puts us amongst the lowest in the world amongst democracies. So that was already a cause for concern in 2019.
So, in fact, if we break it down a little bit more, your calculations turned out from the acronym that you called VEP, Voting Eligible Population, it came down to about 49% when you were doing your maths. But what about the other measure that's also possible, which is VAP, which is Voting Age Population?
That's right. So you can also do voting age population. That just means you take the number of people in South Africa who are over the age of 18. They are voting age. The only difference is there that you should really only look at South African citizens. And the difference is fairly minor. It's about a 5% difference. Stats SA can have made estimate on that in 2019. So I'm basing it on their estimate. So in other words, voting age population would be even lower. The statistic in 2019 would have been about 46%. But we should really be dividing by the number of South African citizens. So that would be 49% in 2019.
So I believe you've been doing the same exercise as well for these elections. The IEC told us that there were 26 million people who are registered out of a possible 42 million that could have been registered. But in actual reality, only, about 12 million people actually turned up on voting day on Monday. What's the mathematics looking like in terms of election 2021?
That's right. So, as a percentage of the actual electorate, the voter turnout for these recent elections is very low. It's about 33%. 1 in 3 people in South Africa who were eligible to vote actually voted. And I think that's a figure we should really be quoting in the media, at the same time as giving the voter turnout as a percentage of the registered voters. But I think the 1 in 3 figure is the most important figure for the state of our democracy. It's very low. It has been low in the past. So in 2000, it was somewhere similar in the first municipal elections. What is very concerning, though, is that voter participation picked up rapidly after that, and it rapidly has sunk now. So this is basically the lowest it's been, and on the trajectory we're going now, I think we can say we're in a crisis. If we get similarly low numbers in the next national elections, then that is a serious crisis. I mean, everybody votes a little bit less in the local elections, so we expect that. But 33% of your electorate actually voting I think is something that we should really take notice of.
Yeah. Lastly, you've also been comparing these figures with what the trends are in, jurisdictions such as France, United States, and United Kingdom in terms of, is it picking up the participation of voting eligible population? What came out of that if you compare with those jurisdictions?
Well, when we compare with other countries, we should compare apples with apples. So we should take other countries' number of people who voted and divide by the number of people who are eligible to vote in those countries as well. So don't just take what you hear on the media because, they would usually also take as a percentage of registered voters. But the percentage of registration in various countries is very different to ours. So in the UK, almost 100% of eligible voters are registered. And in the US, it's a bit lower, but it's still fairly high. So you need to compare apples with apples. When you do that, I mean, for example, in the US and the UK is sitting at around, I think, 70% of their citizens actually vote who are eligible in their parliamentary elections. In the US presidential elections, I think it's around 60%. So that's to be compared with our previous national elections where it was 49%. So that's very low, and it puts us amongst the lowest in the world. We didn't have much more to fall before we were really the lowest amongst all democracies. So, we do rank very badly with respect to other countries, and we should get rid of this myth that voter turnout in South Africa is actually quite good, because it's not.
All right, Bruce Bartlett, thank you for giving us the cold, hard facts as well as crunching the numbers there for us in terms of, we may report one thing in terms of the official statistics, but what is the actual reality of voter participation? Bruce Bartlett there is Senior Lecturer in Mathematics at the University of Stellenbosch.